Cinema has developed a lot in areas like male and female representation, changes and development in genres, and the use of special effects. To showcase some of these developments in cinema, I'll be comparing the representation of violence in Batman from 1986 with The Dark Knight from 2008, and the depiction of vampires in The Lost Boys from 1987 with What We Do in the Shadows from 2014. To begin with, Batman and The Dark Knight. These two films are perfect examples of how the representation of violence has developed and changed throughout the years of cinema. In both films, Batman, the character, fights without many weapons, never guns or knives, and sometimes with armored vehicles like the Batmobile or the Batwing, whereas the Joker in both films uses very different means of violence. Jack Nicholson's Joker uses a lot of joke gags, like electric shock rings to kill people, as well as parade balloons filled with deadly gas, even a gun with a comically large barrel. Unsurprisingly, this clown's violent scenes are mostly shown in a comical fashion, as if it's to remind people that nothing like this would ever happen. A lot of films you see today that have violence are mostly set in public places, like at the start of The Dark Knight, when Heath Ledger's Joker robs a bank with a heist crew and a school bus. Throughout The Dark Knight, the Joker's major crimes or violent scenes are in a public place, or with a lot of innocent people present. A few, for example, would be the Harvey Dent fundraising party, the construction site, the ferry boats that carried hundreds of people out of Gotham when the Joker threatened every life in the city, and of course the Gotham General Hospital terror attacks. This Joker states during the movie,
You see, I'm a guy of simple taste. I enjoy, dynamite, and gunpowder, and gasoline.
which is evident when he continuously blows up a lot of buildings. Heath Ledger's Joker isn't like a simple comic book accurate, funny psychopath like Jack Nicholson's Joker. Heath Ledger's Joker is a terrorist, which emulates a lot of real world fears that came to light due to 9/11. Films released before 9/11 and films released after 9/11 with conflict or violence in scenes have a big difference between them. For example, Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, which started its production in 2000 and ended in July of 2001, has its big final confrontation at the end in a magical dungeon, and the focus of the fight isn't the violence. It's the Philosopher's Stone, which is shown as the main focus due to it being the only thing in the shot that's in focus, while the violence isn't. And the contrasting example is Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban from 2004, when the main characters are traveling on a train to their school. When the train is stopped and an evil creature attacks them, the scene is very dark and drawn out to emphasize the violence, unlike the first film in the series. As the series continued, the way violence was portrayed did get lighter. Moving on to The Lost Boys and What We Do in the Shadows, we see two vampire films with 27 years between them. Many people have talked about how The Lost Boys was a film that defined the modern genre for vampire films, and it's clear to see that between both of these two films, there are a lot of similarities, but there are also a lot of difference between them too. The depiction of vampires in What We Do in the Shadows isn't much different than in The Lost Boys. In The Lost Boys, the vampires are a gang of biker troublemakers who kill for fun and sport. They're seen as evil beings that by the end of the film need to be killed, while in What We Do in the Shadows, the vampires are just roommates in a house who only kill to eat when they need to, and they aren't seen as evil. Both the Lost Boy vampires and the What We Do in the Shadows vampires can turn into animals, create the illusion of insects as food, live long lives unless killed by hunters or catch fire from the sunlight, sleep during the day in their dens and wake at night, although the Lost Boy vampires sleep upside down in an abandoned and collapsed hotel, and the vampires in What We Do in the Shadows sleep in coffins, or in the case of the character Peter, a stone tomb that are inside a big house. On the other hand, the vampires of the Lost Boys dress of the times, even though they are a little bit obscure, which you can't say about What We Do in the Shadows vampires, who struggle to find suitable outfits to wear chosen from really old clothing for a night out clubbing. In many ways, The Lost Boys was a serious film from a genre that was marketed as scary and frightening. But What We Do in the Shadows showed us that not all films with a common theme, like vampires, werewolves, or ghosts, as just a few examples, has to follow a trend or follow the structure of previous films with the same theme. And as time goes on, we will see the world of cinema continue to develop, change, and progress in all sorts of ways.